Hi, I'm Jennifer Poole,
And I'm Dave Poole.
and this is our 20 days.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Our 20 Days. Today we continue our discussion on mentorship. And today I'm very pleased to have a special guest, Grace Entingh, who I worked with for, 7 or 8 years back in the late 90s, early 2000s at Mead Corporation. We both had the great privilege of working for John Langenbahn, who I spoke about in the previous episode. And today Grace and I kind of explore that relationship a little more. But we all, I think, we shared this experience, and I know all of us felt wonderfully about John personally and as a leader and as a mentor. And as part of this podcast Mentorship Monday series we're doing, I'm kind of reaching out to folks like yourself that spent time with John. And I know I learned a ton of things, either directly or indirectly, working with John, and certainly as a contrast between, say, him and some of the other leaders that weren't John. Let's just leave it at that. And so what do you remember about working for John that made an impression upon you, either as part of your career or you personally as just a human being?
Well, I can say from both sides. As a human being, I have the utmost respect for him, more so than most anyone else, for many reasons. And it's because the way he acts, the way he treats people with kindness, dignity and respect. And he and I have maintained a relationship still to this day, and are in contact with one another. And part of that is from that established relationship that we had through the working years, and then just keeping in touch as friends. But I think from a leader perspective, when I first started at the Mead Corporation, I worked for John, and it was a situation that they had a leader that had hired me, and they very shortly, John called me in and asked me if I would take over his role for an interim period of time. And he said, "I'm not going to give you any details." I said, "I don't need any." And he said, "Whatever you need, let me know. And I think you have the background and experience to manage it." And so, without question, about what's that mean pay-wise, what's that mean position-wise, etc., took that job. And he let me be me and manage it the way that I wanted to. That was one of the beauties about John. He did not tell you how to do things. He trusted in your skills and abilities. And he treated you with, he had no preconceived notion about you're this or you're that. He let you be who you were and guide and lead. And there's a beauty to that. He also made himself so available. And when you talk mentorship, for anything that you needed, you could go to him, but he never put himself upon you.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. I know. And Paul said something very similar yesterday in almost exact words that you just used, in terms of he let you be you, and relied on your skills, your abilities. John was not going to step in and decide which PC to buy or which mainframe to buy or which vendor to choose. That's what he hired you for. And he was excellent at keeping his nose out of those things. And the thing that that Paul added to that conversation was John would run the interference for you that needed to be run politically or, with the other executive leaders. And again, let you focus on doing your job and not deal with some of the BS that he would deal with for you.
Yeah. And he listened to understand. He absolutely was one of the greatest listeners, still is, without interjecting his solution, etc., and would allow you to work through it. Sometimes he'd guide you through it.
Oh, sure.
But
Yeah.
He did, I mean, when you talk about greatness in leadership, um, he would clear the path. And
Yeah.
in the one particular role I had in managing the application group that had all the executive offices, there was some interference that needed to be run.
Oh yeah.
Um, Another critical thing that he did is he made suggestions of connections and contacts for you,
Yeah.
not for you to, not with specifics, but if you needed, because you were going to go into a new avenue of work, um, he would tell you, here's some resources you might want to look at,
Mm-hmm.
and left it to you to
Mm-hmm.
choose.
And
That's respect.
the thing I always found interesting about John too is that John is not without opinions.
Mm-mm.
He holds very strong opinions about a lot of things. Now, how to do a particular technical thing was not one of them,
No.
but in terms of how the world ought to work, and to this day has a very set of strongly held opinions,
Yes, he does.
and that never was a liability to him, as far as I could tell.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
It was actually a source of great strength in the fact that I think the folks that he had to deal with on a peer level had great respect for him because he
Mm-hmm.
did have heartfelt, thought out, explainable positions on
Mm-hmm.
various things, as opposed to folks that just go popping off and then don't have any substance behind
Right.
the pop off. So I think he did a great job of earning the respect of those around him, which made him a great mentor. That just as an example to me was a great thing. Is you're better off to figure out how to get along with folks in some fashion by demonstrating that you're a player here. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
And he did. He had respect. I think that's one of the things that I've talked to people about him, is he had. I don't know anyone in that professional circle, from the very top to the very bottom rung, that didn't respect John.
yeah,
And it's because of the way he treated people,
yeah,
and it was with dignity and respect, and he was kind. Look,
yeah,
dropping you off my
yeah.
little thing I've got set up here. Um, he was kind, and yet he also was. I recall one time that John uh, actually corrected me about something very specifically, and deservingly so. Um, and it was, I publicly mishandled a situation and let my emotions take it over. And that he said that didn't work well for you. And in the way that that's the other side of it, from a mentor perspective. He didn't call me in and say, "What in the
Yeah,
name did you just do?"
right.
Because he had witnessed
Yeah.
it. What did you just do? Um, but
Well, you were in a unique position, at least in the time that you and I worked together.
mhm,
You might have been the only female that reported to him.
I was. I was.
And tell me a little bit about that. How did he give you coaching in that regard in any way, or help you through that unique circumstance you were in?
Absolutely. And part of that is one of the things that I wrote down, and one of the communications that I've had with John was that he gave me an opportunity that had several different fa- facets to it. One of them,
Mm-hmm.
I was the only woman. And in a group of men that had been with Meade and perhaps expected to have that position that he put me in. And when it was interim, there were feathers ruffled, and when it became permanent, there definitely were, and there
Yeah.
was difference. And he said to me, "You do recognize that there may be some challenges because you are a woman. And I said, well, John, I hope you put me in this position because you don't look at me as that woman, but that person that can do the job, regardless
Right.
of gender. And he agreed. And he treated me with that type of I don't think he ever looked at it differently that I was the only woman on his staff for a long time. He said things to me that, as you know, he said to you all. And we did
Yeah.
joke, and we because I was a woman, there were circumstances that we got into. Some of them hilarious with things that would have been said,
Right.
and we said in front of one another that were like, whoops.
Yeah. And
So, yeah,
and again, we both directly reported to him for probably 3 years or so, plus or minus.
I directly
Uh,
reported to John for 15 years.
you did. I know. I only
Oh,
reported directly to him for about three
yeah,
of that. So I
yeah,
was in school and office, and then
yeah,
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 and then reported to McGrain for a while. In the time that you and I would have been in meetings and whatever else
right,
on a regular basis with John together,
yeah,
I can't remember any circumstance where John treated you any differently than he
yeah,
treated the rest of us,
never.
which was also a great example. So maybe behind the scenes he's having a different conversation with you that he might have with me, but that's
Yeah,
just true for any individual. That's not gender specific.
yeah.
That's just being good about knowing who you're talking to and how to talk to them.
One of the things that transpired, and I shared it with John, is when, and it must have been halfway through my career that I worked with him. Some man said to me, "Aren't you concerned that the men that you work with are making a lot more money than you are?" And I said, "I'm concerned about what I'm making and that John Langenbaum feels that I trust he addresses that issue as it should be addressed
Right.
based on the criteria." And I told him that. And I said, you have, um, I feel that you have treated me well, not the highest paid, not the lowest paid. And you can't ask for more. But
Yeah.
I did have somebody say, well, you have to be making a lot less than the men. Well, you know what? Some of those men had a lot different skill set than I did. And from
Right.
a technology perspective, from a, you know, it just, you have to understand what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And John and I did talk about that. Um, because the other thing is I had women on my staff that I inherited, and I inherited many people during that time,
Yep.
from varying
You seem
degrees.
to be Miss Fix It in a lot
Yeah.
of respects. So lots of other problems that other people were having, you ended up inheriting.
Yes, I did inherit them. And anything that I saw that was perhaps a difference based on gender from the past, he corrected with me, with HR, if it was deserving and they were
Right.
performing at a different level. And
Right.
that's the kind of man John was, because he didn't necessarily have the visibility to it,
Right.
or it hadn't been brought to his attention. But I think I had a tremendous amount of trust in John. And that's difficult for people to say about leaders that they work with.
Yeah, it
And
is. And, one of the things that John did for me in terms of a personal development perspective,
um,
um, and when he said this to me, I never, it stuck with me, but it never was one of these things that I consciously thought about a lot over the years.
mhm,
But now that being, in my 60s and, looking back over my career, he turned out to be very prophetic. And the
mhm,
statement he made was, you really need to kind of reinvent yourself about every 10 years.
mhm,
What got
mhm,
you through your 20s probably isn't going to get you through your 30s,
right,
probably isn't going to get you through your 40s. And just from, when I look at, if I just stand back and just look at my resume, let alone just who I was as a human being in those time frames,
mhm,
I was this sort of role in my 20s. I was this sort of role in my 30s. I
mhm,
became more of an entrepreneur in my 40s. And, so now that I'm in my 60s, I'm kind of back to becoming, in some respects, about my teenage years. I don't
Yeah.
have a daily direction. It's
Yeah.
what am I
Yeah.
going to do today?
Yeah.
So I always felt that just listening to his observations on life were
Mhm.
often more illuminating than I gave credit for at the time.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, they ended up being quite significant to me.
And me as well. But I think one of the things for um, even the mentorship is the professional and the personal side.
Hmm.
And um, John John and I talked about different opportunities and things that were going on after he had left me. And we kept in touch about what all that meant to me.
Hmm.
And one of the things I think about are some of the things that he said. Listen to understand. When we talked about where we're going to be, where we are, all that type of thing, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. And that was through one of the consultants that came in. But John used to say occasionally, "Is that the path that you want to be on?"
Yeah. Hey, all. Thanks for watching this episode of Our 20 Days. Look for us at our20days.com and please hit the subscribe button so you're notified of all future episodes as they drop, usually on Thursdays. Thanks for watching.